You still see paper on every job site and a binder. Even the most digitized job sites, there's still a binder and there's still a filing cabinet in the trailer. It shouldn't be easier to buy a cup of coffee or get into the, subway or the tube than it is to see if someone's safe to do a job on the job site. Humans are really good at these kinds of things. And so AI should support humans is my goal.
Okay, Juliana. So this is part of a discussion that we're doing with Procore around this state of safety and safety technology that we're doing within the construction industry. And I am excited to be talking to you about Procore's angle into all of this and where they fit within the ecosystem. So I want to dive into some questions here. The first one being, before you were in Procore, you were in healthcare. So was there anything, it's kind of a weird question, but something I'm digging into right now is construction as an industry can learn from other industries. So is there anything that you learned from healthcare which might surprise you, or that we could learn about how construction approaches safety?
Definitely. I think that healthcare and construction have so much in common. First of all, having highly trained, highly technical people in very high risk situations. I think healthcare has the benefit of just a lot more deep regulations around interoperability. And so the technology you can build in healthcare tends to be, um, you know, it has to connect. Everything has to connect in healthcare now, globally, right? And that's a huge benefit and structured system. In construction, that's not so much the
Mm,
case. Your company can create data systems and infrastructure the way that they want. There's a lot of flexibility. I would say that I find construction professionals to be a lot more open to new technology. They will adopt any net new tool. I mean, just like you're on a job site, if something does something cool and faster and better, a construction professional is the first to say, "Yeah, let me go try that."
mm,
Right?
mm.
They're very open and want to try new things. So I would say, healthcare can actually learn some things from construction in terms of being open within practice environments to try new workflows, new technologies. But I do think, your question was, what could you pull from healthcare? And I do think that safety is a great example of where you can have, common standards across job sites so that you don't have the brutal friction that every worker has to kind of learn a new system, right? Learn new things um, for very basic safety standards. So across all hospital operating systems, there are expectations of how you manage and how you get ready for surgery, right? How you wash in, how you wash out. I think that there are starting to be more standards around that, but it really does, the regulation and the enforcement comes down to the job site, comes down to the super who's trained, comes down to, the owner, the schedule, the pressure you're under, right? And so in healthcare environments, you never speed up something that is around safety. You slow down, right? And I think that is a huge part that construction can take. And I think, again, I want to be fair though to construction. Like I do see people doing that, like when there are important things slowing down. But I do think when you go to job sites and you hear terrible stories of incidents and mortality on job sites, a lot of it comes down to unfortunate pressure around scheduling or, not
Mm.
having that psychological safety to actually just say, "Hey, this is dangerous. I need to take a break. This is not gonna happen today," right? And so, healthcare does have that, which is amazing, and I think we should all think about how we can bring that into construction
Mm.
as technology professionals, but also as an industry overall, so
Mm. Oh yeah. Wow. That would form part of a very interesting discussion. So you also led Procore's mobile team before moving into safety and quality. How does that shape your thinking when you're thinking about creating tools for people in the field?
oh, everything. I love native mobile applications. It's the most fun part of technology, I would say. Not that web development isn't enjoyable, but yeah, everything about mobile is how do I do complex things in the simplest format? And so, our operating systems of Apple and Android every year, and sometimes even faster than a year, give us these new opportunities to, improve that experience. So, I have my iPhone 16 here, which has now a button that you can access the camera very quickly, right?
Mhm, mhm.
So, there's widget technology, right? So, one thing we're trying to do right now for safety is safety professionals just need to get access to the safety data as quickly as possible, or field workers just need to get access to the camera as quickly as possible, bypassing everything else for certain things you're doing on the job site, right? Um, Mobile native technology allows you to do that,
Mm,
right? Really, really well, really easily. And so, yeah, every 6 months, every year, there's just new opportunities to improve that experience. And I always say you shouldn't compare to your, you know, the flavor of the month construction app. I think you should compare to the best app in the app store, what we're doing. And that's across everything at Procore, not just the mobile app. Everything is in the field ultimately in some capacity.
mm,
In my area at least. So
mhm.
that's what we're chasing. Like if I don't know, let's say, someone on the field is using, DoorDash or Instacart or, whatever, and then they go into Procore and they're like, "What? Like,
Yeah, yeah.
why can't I double click? Why don't I have gestures?" Right? Like that's what you're competing against. You're competing against the other part of the world that someone's spending in their mobile experience. And so that's what we try to keep in mind with everything we do here, and quality and safety and mobile still, right? Just because I'm not there, that still
Yeah.
remains. So
I'm kind of sad that we're constrained by the safety objective that we're trying to get out of this because I'm sure we could have a really great discussion on just general best practices for building products for the construction industry, and maybe for a future episode.
yeah,
What's your
yeah, I'll come back
yeah happy to
if
what
you'll have me. We
we'll,
can meet in London if I can ever if I can ever get there.
we'll see how you get on in the next 40 minutes and we'll make a
Yeah.
call. Yeah, give you a
Yes.
Simon
Yeah. Thank
Cowell.
you. Okay. Yeah. Right. Yes.
um, cool. So, how much of the base, like you obviously see a lot of data across the customer base. Like, how close or how far are we away from digitization, specifically as it relates to safety? Is it still very paper based oriented, or is there like
Yeah.
improvements?
So I think there's a lot of industry improvements here. You still see paper on every job site and a binder. Even the most digitized job sites, there's still a binder and there's still a filing cabinet in the trailer. And part of that is everyone needs a backup system, and I don't think that's a bad thing, right? Because, you know, that is what the safety professional's job is to do, is to have the plan B, the plan C, the plan D, right? Um, I do think that some of the most critical elements of like a safety technology is having offline capability. It's not just being able to fill out the form, but it's being able to access safety information at any state of the job site, which a lot of times happens to be when you do not have internet, right? Um, so I think that there probably will always be some level of paper forms. I think the way that people are adopting technology, there's a lot more buy-in, I would say, from I see more senior leadership positions in safety, which is amazing. I see more owners talking about safety. I see more, um, I think SCs and GCs always knew how critical safety was, but it wasn't always elevated. And so in the industry, I'm seeing it elevated. I'm seeing more budget spend in safety, which is also incredible, right? Not just for technology, but for improving your PPE. There's a lot of new innovations in PPE, and so yeah, I think that we're on an arc.
Mm,
I think it's more than filling out a form. It's looking at safety comprehensively end to end. The benefit of having that data digitized, I'm actually very open to I think you would have a better experience filling out the form or filling out whatever paperwork, most cases through technology. But if you're, on, floor 50 of skyscraper and you have the form and you need to fill it out, take a picture of it, upload it in, right? What we're trying to do is derive all the data and then help you find the misses that you may have had, especially with, job hazard assessments. Like hey, I think you may want to think about this before you get into this next set of work, right? So I view it as it's still a slower journey. There's probably always going to be a role for paper. But I do think that I've seen a huge change in the past 2 years in the industry.
Good. Glad to hear it. What would is like? Yeah. So I was just trying to recap this question and ask it in a
Yeah.
I can't elegant way is the word I'm trying to say. But someone we spoke to said that their argument, they're a safety consultant, and what they said was that most of the safety software that exists doesn't actually improve the design experience or safety of work at just capturing data that people pay lip service to. What's your thoughts on such a statement?
I think I think that right now that is probably more true than it should be. And there's this interesting friction on job sites where I think what the forms and what the paperwork are trying to do is to slow people down to think, right? And to plan and to prepare. But what happens ultimately on job sites, and I've seen this many times, um, is sometimes the paperwork happens right before the job. Like, oh, forgot to fill that out.
Mm,
I need to go fill that out. It's because it's a requirement, not because it's a part of the culture, a part of the system of thinking of what am I doing this week? What do I need to train my team on? Right. And I would say there are tons of customers that we work with, and there are tons of job sites that do have instilled that culture. And it is part of a framework of the system needs to work around safe, high quality work. The system needs to support people of any background and trade and specialty to be able to operate there. So it doesn't become, I think, the word that the consultant used was lip service,
mm,
right? Um, if you live the value, right, and you make the space and you make folks really slow down and think, okay, what's coming up today? What's coming up in the next week, the next month? Should I change what's happening? Should I coordinate the job site differently? Then I don't think in any way those jobs that you have to do for safety are lip service. I think when they fall into that, it's when it's just a box you're checking um, to get to some set of work. And then also, like a lot of the processes, like, I mean, this was a big part of healthcare too. Like adding more data to collect and more boxes to click does not necessarily give you better outcomes, right? Um, it's like doing your taxes, right? No
mm,
one wants to do your taxes. Maybe in the UK it's better, but in the US, it's very it can take a long time, right? It can be very like, annoying and frustrating and there's a lot of box clicking, right? And so there's alert fatigue, there's tech fatigue, right? And so that takes away from good conversations. And so I do agree. I think that it exists in some capacity. I think it's our job as technology professionals to design um around the job
mm,
that you're trying to do and less around I think sometimes it turns into a form
mhm,
in
mhm,
safety. It should be like, "Why are you having this conversation? Did you miss something? Should you slip?" Like, creating natural friction is, I think, part of the habituation process that we're looking at.
mhm.
Now, the reality today is there are some box checking, and there's a lot of alert fatigue, and so I do think trying to find ways to batch that into learnings is, like, our core goal. But it's it's still nascent. We're still figuring it out. I think everyone's still in that
Yeah,
process, and so
yeah. That sounds
I
tough.
hope we can do better is what my hope is.
Yeah, that's a really difficult thing to try and solve for. It's like very behavioral, yeah, and I guess psychological, which is like how do you figure
Yes,
that stuff out?
definitely, definitely.
Yeah. Um. Okay. So some like as part of this, a lot of these discussions that we've had so far, adoption always comes up as like one of the biggest challenges, in particular when it comes to safety. I think you hinted on a few things with your previous answer. Obviously, Procore, I guess, lots of users, probably in the millions. What if you learn anything particular about what's driving field adoption versus what doesn't? I'm sure because obviously your experience with the mobile team as well, like you maybe answered some of this question already, but interesting
Yeah.
to hear.
Yeah, I think so adoption is a technology problem. It's not a generally, it's not a customer or site problem, in my opinion.
Mm.
Um, it's also a marketing problem too, probably. I mean, you can have the best app in the world and no one, gets to it. No one knows what it's doing. But I do think one thing, a system of thought that I think is very important in any industry that has a very highly physical environment is service design thinking. So you're looking at the physical patterns of a job site as much as you're looking at the technology processes that you're trying to, um, you know, not enforce, but encourage
Mm,
and recommend.
mm,
And so part of that is, on part of what I love about this job is I get to go on job sites. I get to see how people interact, not just with the technology, but the jobs they're actually doing, right? And so a big part of that is on the job site is you are looking to do your job safely to get home to your kids, right? Almost every safety talk I've been in, someone brings up their kids. Like, you're the hero of the family and you
mhm,
need to get home to your kids, right?
mhm,
And that's what you're thinking about. And then the second thing is do a good job. Like, I want to go do a good job, right? Like, I want to get this job done. I want to like get paid. I want to I want to get home. Like, so you have to go in and think about the mindset. And then also, it's a highly physical environment where, frankly, a lot of times it is not safe to have your phone out or you do not want your phone out. And so that's the environment you're in. And you have to really think about what are the things that make sense on a job site for these field workers or field users to be accessing this information and where and when. And so I think I'm a really big believer of physical access points. So we launched QR code stickers, which are very common in job sites for Procore, because again, another just quick access point to get into the job you need to do. Like, hey, everyone needs to fill out their daily hazard assessment. Click it, get it done,
mhm,
right? Everyone needs to update their certifications. Click it, get it done, right? Um, I also think like offline support is important. A lot of times when you talk to folks in the field, they'll say, you know, hey, like I like when I need to do the work or when I have a moment of downtime, like I'm like waiting for someone to arrive and I'm like sitting in like the garage level, 7 or, down like in the depths of, Austin or wherever it is. And so it's like, yeah, you have to design for the challenges and the edge cases and the access points. And then I think you see really good adoption. Specifically in safety. I think there's broader issues and around like marketing or also just like technology fatigue, like way too many apps, like way too many things to do different jobs and no one can remember their login and no one can
mhm,
remember what they're doing. So I
mhm,
do think like unified platform, one-stop shop, like that's a lot of opportunity for folks to reduce that burden on folks in the field to not have to think like where should I be? They're just, you know, physically interacting, getting it done and like moving on with their day so they can focus on doing a great job and staying safe,
mhm,
you know?
mhm.
So,
Yeah, no, very insightful. What do you think about accessibility versus willingness? I have a long-winded question to this, but obviously there's issues about like people not being able to access apps because they forget their login or like they forget their Apple ID or something and they can't get into their phone. And maybe there's a language issue as well. Like how much of thought do you put
yeah.
toward that?
Well, I mean, like, I'll be honest, I forget my login ID
Oh, all
sometimes
the
to
time.
certain things.
One of the
Like, I
worst
mean,
things.
like, I think like the first part of this is like having some empathy for people in the field, like, or anyone. Like, man, at a certain point, there's so many apps, right? And you're trying to keep like, did I set up my account with an Apple ID? Did I set it up with a Google account? Oh, wait, no, I have my own password for that, right? So yeah, as much less thinking, right? So that that is not healthy friction. That is unhealthy friction. Um, I think we have more work to do there, just to be like perfectly candid. in terms of the access points. A lot of what we're doing instead of focusing on login is again like these physical access points like QR codes, stickers, or shareable links. We have an access point where you can invite people through QR codes, just using like the ways that people actually interact in day to day. I think, the pandemic was, did the most for QR codes more than anything else in the entire world, I think. So, it went from a technology that, some people use but wasn't well adopted to now everyone uses it every day.
Yeah.
And so I think it's a very well worn pattern. I also think that like there's a lot of interesting things happening around PPE with NFC chips and having access points on like your actual physical like PPE. So like Studson, Milwaukee, those are American companies. I've
Hmm.
I've seen other international companies are also exploring this, but using NFC chips to provide access points to is something that we're working on and thinking about a lot actually. So again, I think you know, it's kind of as humans, like how can you be empathetic to like what would make your day better? And then again, just like trying to abstract away from the login burden, right?
Mm.
Towards just things that construction professionals are already naturally doing and feel more comfortable with.
Yeah, meeting people where they are. What was the? Can you explain the NFC and chips in PPE? That was interesting. I never heard this before.
Oh yeah, sure. So we have been partnering with a number of different people around exploring. So the Studson helmet has an NFC chip in it. So our safety card product that we're in closed beta on right now, but going GA, is NFC enabled. So you can tap it and you can access your qualifications, your certifications.
Mm, mhm.
Um, it's also really important because a lot of those conversations are happening in real time, right? Like you are literally going
Yeah.
and saying like, "Hey, should you be doing this work? Do you have your certification? Do you like?" And so today, I mean, I've seen on job sites where people are like, "Oh, let me go get my wallet," and like, "Oh yeah, here's like the printed frayed thing," and you're like looking at it, and you're like, "Wait, this is expired. Like, what's
Oh
going
no.
on?"
Yeah.
Um, yeah, and so I think again, you already have protection. You already have this. Milwaukee has similar functionality, and they also have a product called One Key, which is NFC enabled. They have
Mm.
a number of different things. They have like a
Mhm,
keychain. They have
mhm.
it in their tools, and like just like in the UK, you can tap into you know the tube with your credit card, like or your bank card, right? Like
You could do it in
it
New
should
York
be just
as
as
well,
easy
as
to
I
do.
learned.
Oh, okay. Well, that's great. Austin doesn't have any public transport, so
Okay.
you can't do it. You can't do any of that here. But think about it, like it shouldn't be easier to buy a cup of coffee or get into the subway or the tube than it is to see if someone's safe to do a job
Mm,
on the job site. So I think that's what we're really focused on is and since we've worked with Studson and Milwaukee, like I've seen that adoption of those products like skyrocket because they truly do solve a problem on the job site and they're creating that physical entry point, which that's what field workers desire. Like make my life easier.
mhm.
Like I did my job. I'm wearing all my PPE. Why are you asking me to do another thing? It's like I feel you.
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
the last thing you need is to go figure out which form you should be filling out or how to add your printed out certification. Just take a photo of it. It's there.
Mhm.
You can, maybe get it laminated, put it somewhere else.
Yeah, all there on the phone. Yeah, makes
So,
sense. Can we just want to move on to understanding where Procore sits in like the world of safety technology and the vendors that exist. So, on one side, you have like
yeah.
I suppose like specific software that exists for a specific purpose, like safety, and these also integrate with Procore as well. And then on the other hand, you obviously have Procore, which is a platform and has multiple modules, not just safety, but safety being one of them. Like,
Mhm.
so could where does Procore sit? And maybe people would also be interested in knowing like when does it make sense to use specialist, specific platform versus like relying on Procore to do your safety, whatever you need to do?
Yeah. Yeah, I think so. Safety is just such a core, essential part of the work you're doing in the job site. So I think that's what we're looking at is how do we find all those critical jobs that really should be embedded and enabled via also the schedule can get interesting data from, the media you're already capturing, the other project data that you're collecting in Procore, even financial data, right? All of this data that we have can help job sites have a better picture of how to keep teams safe, right? So I'm going to give an example here. I've heard from many different safety leaders, untidy job sites lead to unsafe job sites. Guess what we have? We have a ton of data on what's happening on a job site. And so you can kind of predict, like, and say, hey, these are the job sites that are untidy.
Mm,
Maybe you should talk to them. Like, maybe you should get rid of those trip hazards, right? So that's like the power of the platform is understanding what are the jobs that really relate to all the other core experiences that you're doing on the job site. And I do think that safety is just over time, it's just such a big part of everything you do that while you do need a safety space, and we do have a safety space in Procore, like we are trying to connect all the tools as much as possible with other parts of the app, um, so that it all feels like one seamless experience and not just a safety experience. But your question is around partnership, right? And where do we see, how to work with other vendors?
mm,
I think that there's always a space for innovation, not just in safety, but every part of construction. Construction is a huge industry and it's super fragmented, right? And we work directly with lots of partners, whether it be technology partners, hardware partners. Um, and I think that, the ecosystem has moved towards a trusted and managed approach recently. And that was partly from feedback from our customers around, you know, more isn't better, right? We want better integrations, deeper integrations into Procore. And there is a fair amount of, work that is required to do that. So I think that's part of our strategy. But yeah, I mean, I do truly believe like that in construction, there's so many specialties, verticals, countries, regions. Even in the UK, like a great example of it is there's the competency testing that is required in the UK.
hmm
Um, we will plan to partner on that, right? Because um, those companies in that space are doing a great job, right? And it serves a need, and they're highly adopted, right? Um, yeah, so I do think that also the safest job site is the job site where people are adopting the product, right? So, we're looking to work with everyone and make sure that, safety is top of mind. So I think that yes, it should be in Procore because we have a lot of customers who are going to benefit from that. And there's a lot of value of not having to jump between so many spaces to do such a critical job. At the same time, I think, there's always going to be a need for innovators who focus on very specific problems of whether it's regional or trade specific. And yeah, we love working with our partners. Yeah,
Very cool. We have to move on to the hottest topic
yeah,
of the time that we're in. And so, where
yes.
are you when it comes to safety, artificial intelligence as it relates to the safety product? And like, are there any cool stuff that you're working on that you could share with us, or like, where are you?
Yeah. So I'm a big fan of humans still, and I'm also a big fan of AI in the right capacity.
hmm
I do think it's important to note that because one of the questions I think we should be asking more, and I talked to Chris Lingiza, our technology like
hmm
evangelist in the space. I'm sure you know Chris,
hmm
and if folks know Chris. Um, I think we really need to be asking the question about what do humans do really well and what do humans not do well? And let's go put AI in some of those spaces that they don't do things well, right?
Love that. Yeah.
And so what do humans do really well? Like, um, on a job site, they have intuition and they can understand how someone's doing and if they're not safe for work, right? And that's a big part of construction that we don't get to talk about enough, and I think should always be part of safety is, are you fit to be on the job site today, right? Are you safe to be here? How are you doing? Getting to know your team members. Are you ready to do this job, right? You may be certified, but you never like truly done it, right? Do you need help? That's what humans are good at. They're good at training, they're good at understanding, they're good at seeing if someone
Mm.
is listening and is ready to do this work. Humans are really good at anomaly detection, actually. Like even AI is good at that, but humans are actually even better. Like they can feel that something's not right on the job site. They can see that you know, like, hey, like that weather doesn't look so good. Like, but it says on my iPhone, like, it's not supposed to be raining right now. I think it is gonna rain. Like
Mhm.
maybe we should clear out, right? Like humans are really good at these kinds of things. And so AI should support humans is my goal. A couple of things, we're working on, like I mentioned, leveraging media to understand trends on the job site for safety. Um, Also filling in gaps, like reading JHAs, DHAs, I think swims and rams is what's called in Europe.
Yep.
So that like, hey, you filled out the form, but you missed like a lot of risks, potential risks for the work you're doing, the scope you're doing. Like, let's talk about that. Like, let's go through that. I I think it can catch things. It's another set of eyes. Um, so like again, I think there needs to just be, again, I come back to like healthy friction, right? Some AI tools I see in the industry today are just like automating and pencil whipping data into forms. Just because you filled out the form doesn't mean that anyone was safer. So like I'm not seeking to do that. I don't think job sites are seeking to do that. I think they're trying to help teams that don't know the hazards, or especially with so many younger teams today. Like a big thing um I've been learning from all the various folks we work with is, you know, job sites are safer when you have, that well-worn, you know, super who's, 50 years of experience in, and he can tell you all the tips and tricks and hazards, right? And as soon as that person retires, wait, why aren't things going so well, right? So it's like, how do you
Mm.
democratize or help bring that information? And a lot of times, like, I see companies like creating remote positions for folks who are looking to retire, but like to stay on so like they can be like almost like a helpline
Mhm.
effectively, like that you can call or you can call them in and they can support. And so I think that's really smart. I think it's using human intuition and partnering and marrying like all the things, AI is good with, which is like trend analysis, like being able to like summarize information, right? But yeah, I think we are going to be very careful about around empowering humans, right? And also making sure that customers, when they are leveraging it, they feel a lot of autonomy in how they get to implement it and what's right for their job site and what's right for their trade and what's right for what they need to do, because it's not a one size fits all situation in my opinion.
Yeah, very cool. Someone told us they used a statement where they said that the industry measures unsafety and not safety. So it focuses on a 10% that goes wrong rather than learning from the 90% that goes right. Do your data somehow allow you to flip that? So are you able to like surface what safe looks like and not what unsafe looks like?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think we can in some ways because we do have like outcome data at Procore, right? Like we can look across the whole project and say, oh wow, that this went really well and this had lower incidence and this had um, you know, though I think the trend right now, and I think this is a really good part of what's happening in safety, is sometimes on job sites, the way that things have been implemented with, the regulatory environment, people try to do things to avoid recordable events, right? Because, oh, I don't want a recordable.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah.
How can I
Makes
get
sense.
around the system, right? And so the data is inherently flawed,
Yeah.
right? A little bit.
Uh,
And then I think there's also this other part of it, which is, first of all, like when you start tracking humans, they change their behavior, right? And like, again, going back to your question, what makes a safe job site? What makes an unsafe job site? I think a safe job site means having psychological safety. And when you track, let's say, an observation, or you are doing some work in Procore, you can track positive as well as negative, right? And you create a culture of celebration and excitement around things going well. Um, there are a lot of companies that are focusing more on that, but historically, a lot of the like requirements has always been around negative capture. And so I think, this is actually where AI could be really supportive and helpful of like, hey, like instead of automatically creating 100 observations for unsafe conditions, why don't you create like a report that shows all the good things that are happening
Mm.
with some things that need to improve,
Mhm.
right? But a big part of it also comes down to, again, when you start tracking data, what happens to that data and how do people feel safe about what's going to happen? So I think some of the safest programs track near misses. They track, you know, good process. They try to create a lot of psychological safety around like we would much rather have a near miss and have a root cause analysis and have a conversation and not have it feel like, you know, this is the end of, your job, right? Like this is like catch it before it happens,
Mhm.
have the conversation and have it be a really positive one versus, oh, we only caught the incident and, that person is flagged and they're never going to come to the job site. But how do you catch near misses? You have people who feel trust. You have safety managers on job sites or superintendents who are trained in safety or project managers, project engineers in safety. And you look at it as a conversation. And then also, I do think like I come back to that original point, like, how are you doing today? What's the intuition, right? Like seeing people before they go on the job, getting to know your trades, like having really healthy orientations, really healthy toolbox talks. Again, they're not box checks. They are truly conversations. And I mean, I've been to many, many different toolbox talks. I mean, it can be a wonderful conversation and
can
collaboration.
be.
It can also be like, yeah, can be is the can be is the key. And like there are tools to help make those better. And I think a lot of, if you're not a natural public speaker, right?
Mhm.
Also identifying people say like, you're not very good at this. Maybe we can help you get better. But also like, is there someone here who really is passionate about this and wants to like take this on? It's a leadership opportunity. So yeah, I think like not looking at it as like, again, this is your role, therefore you have to do it. It should be, again, we're all here to like get home safely to our kids, do a good job, enjoy our work, like feel safe to come to me and say like this is not the right time to do this or, slow down, like know you can slow down when you need to. Um and yeah, again, that all comes back to creating that environment, creating that structure that you can feel good about the work you're doing. But yeah, I mean, going back to your question, like, yes, it is a challenge. I think we're in the middle of it. And I would say we're going to continue like thinking about it and trying to build product towards it. But also there is just a huge like culture component of how you train your teams on safety that is going to have probably the biggest impact
Mhm.
because you can always say, oh, I'm going to build a report and I'm going to show all this positive information. But if no one does anything with it, or if your team doesn't get trained on that, then I mean, the culture won't shift,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
So I do think it is going to be as much about what's happening on the job site as what we build in the product.
One thing I was going to ask you was about, are you experiencing customers like um, vibe coding their own things to
Yes.
complement? I don't want to say replace. I just don't like this question because like it's it's a very simplistic way of thinking.
Mhm.
But whatever. Yeah, are you noticing this? Like with you did a rise of vibe coding and people like trying to do their own
Yeah.
thing to
Yeah. I mean,
replace the Procore tool.
yeah. So I think it's important to know I think that technology is going to be better with more people understanding how to build technology because look, I wasn't I took a coding class to get into, tech, right? And it felt like at the time, a decade ago, it was very intimidating, right? Like,
Mm,
but when you have that power, when you know how to code and you know how to build something, right? And you're close to problems, you can understand and you can learn some of the constraints and thinking, right? And so I have seen some customers building, agents or chatbots. And I think, we have a strategy here at Procore where, we now just acquired Datagrid and there's a lot of opportunity um, in having that product in house. We had an agent builder before that. So we've kind of already, had a lot of this functionality already. What I will say is, as you are building, you need to know some very important things. Number one, when you're building on ChatGPT or you're building in Claude and you share that link, a lot of that data now is not your own data, right? There are not data protections in those products. And I think there's a lot of limitations around, data autonomy, data privacy. I think, we have a security team here who make sure that we are SOC compliant, right? And make sure that we have the right standards for a technology um, of our size and for a multi-tenant customer, right? And those are things that are not small. And while you can vibe code some of them, you still need someone to know what they're doing, and you still need to know
mhm,
what meaning they have. Um, so I think it's good that folks understand how to build because they give a lot of really good feedback. They have lots of good ideas. And if anything, it's made us faster in being able to deliver the promise um, of the outcomes that we're driving here at Procore. I think that a lot of folks really, if they want to go down that path, like the expense and then also the missed opportunity in learning, right? I think is a big part of this that doesn't get talked about. I work with a lot of customers who say, "You guys go to every job site. You know what good looks like, right? Like, help us understand what good looks like. Like, give me feedback." And I'm like, "Wow, that's like
mm,
I love that openness
mm,
when we have these conversations because
yeah,
I am not a construction professional by, discipline of construction, but I am a technology professional and I do go to a lot of job sites. And when we build templates and when we build anything that has a discipline specific, it goes through so many experts. It goes through people who have been on, we have many construction professionals here at Procore. It goes to many customers in many different places with many different disciplines, right? So it has been vetted by, you know, amazing, passionate, powerful people who have a lot of great ideas. And so you are really getting something that could up level your process, right? And if you go build your own thing or do your own thing too much, like I do think you miss out on the opportunity to understand what better could look like, right? And I think you also miss the opportunity to be a little self reflective. And now there probably are areas of, construction where maybe your secret sauce is the only thing you want to focus on, but I don't think safety is one of those. Safety is
mm.
definitely an area where you're better when you learn from others and when you're open. And I think it's just a real privilege to work in this area because the safety professionals, they're always so like, we have something called the Safety Innovation Council. And we have a lot of customers who they say, well, this is one of the areas you can be very open with a competitor, right? Because you're better when you have safer people on job sites. Everyone is, and everyone agrees on that. So,
Mhm,
um,
mhm.
yeah, I love seeing look, I love seeing what people are building, and it's always really fun and interesting. And I think like we are empowering people to build in Procore now with Data Grid and our AI strategy. And so, but
Mm.
again, like it's kind of like I don't think anyone wants me to go to the job site and swing a hammer without some training, right? And so I wouldn't do that. But, I do
Mm.
do DIY at home and I end up with a lot of unfinished
Yeah.
projects that I then pay a professional to come fix. So
You could classify as a construction professional.
thank
Yeah,
oh,
you
thank
spend a lot
you.
of time on job sites and you're good at well, I don't know. You didn't
I'm
say
not good
good.
at
You try
DIY. I
DIY.
definitely definitely not.
Yeah. Okay, maybe just two last questions then.
Yeah.
One, I just wanted to touch upon this discussion that we had, and this has come up a few times since we're doing this series about like safety technology being built just purely for compliance issues rather than focus on the productivity side of
Hmm.
the equation. Do you have any like opinions or thoughts on that? Like, is safety technologies just designed around checking a box
Mhm.
because we have to, or is it actually genuinely about like no, there's other benefits to doing this that people don't realize?
Yeah, I think that it's definitely both, right? And it should be both because in the world where there was no compliance standards, there were a lot of unfortunate, and the reason why construction is a driver of mortality and job site mortality and job site injury is because I think that there was not enough focus on that for long enough, right? So I do think it's
Mm.
both, and it should be both because compliance enables a common framework for everyone to be a good actor effectively, right? It's not just paperwork. It's like it creates importance, right? And I did see this in healthcare too. Like, um, there was an act called meaningful use that created standards for what you had to track. And guess what? Mortality, readmission rates, sepsis rates went down because when you have enforcement around good practices, you do see like that risk go down. And I think the same thing is happening on
Mhm.
construction. That being said, I
Mhm.
think compliance cannot replace a good system for safety. So, one of the things we're really passionate about here is safety should be proactive and it should happen way before the work starts. And so we're working on building how you build is important because it should be in scope of what the schedule is, the other things you're doing on the job site, the actual product of what you're building out. Again, we do not want it to have pencil whipping. We want it to slow people down to ask the right questions so that if there is a risk that is identified, you don't do the work until that risk is mitigated, right? Um, so I think it's a little bit more nuanced than just compliance versus productivity. I think it's we all in safety need to be good advocates for, um, you know, legislation and protections, time to do the right things on job sites. And then at the same time, like, yeah, elevating safety, right? And then that doesn't necessarily mean you have to have a different, group. It could be, safety becomes everyone's job. Safety, and it is everyone's job, right? I've seen
Mm.
lots of great job site safety programs that run through the supers and through project managers, right? So I think it's not a one size fits all question. It's not a one size fits all problem on job sites, and that's okay because I think regulation can move industries to do the right thing. And I think it's our job to make those regulatory requests, like, not the product, right? Like, the
Mm.
form should help you do the outcome, the job, and then make sure it's reported and make sure things get tracked correctly. But, like, sometimes I'll see on job sites, like, "Oh, the owner wants us to report this, so here's a form."
Mhm.
Okay, well, that form is like 50 questions long and it's asking the same thing over
Yeah.
and over again. Well, maybe just like it's our job. We want you to put that form in Procore. You should ask that question once. Did you answer it correctly? Replace. Or like, hey, I have 50 of these forms to do. Okay, we can fill out your name and the date and the job site project, and we can fill out a bunch of stuff that is not important. So you can focus on the 10 things that are important, right? Like that's my
Mhm.
job is to make sure that happens.
Mhm.
Um, and then, yeah, I think it's the government's job, and I think it's the local principalities and owners' jobs to say, like, what the standard is, and, like, we shouldn't be showing the seams of that to the field worker who's like, "Okay, like, what do I focus on? Like, I just filled out, like, I feel like I just did my taxes again, and, like, what am I trying to do? So
Yeah.
I know I didn't entirely answer your question. I think it's both, and I think it's okay that it's
Mhm.
both right now, but I think it will
Mhm. Mhm.
continue to evolve, hopefully.
Yeah, I don't think it's as straightforward. It's quite a tricky question as well, to be honest. Like part of it, you just have to do this stuff, right? So, like, it's always going to be the way. And then you can somehow flip that into a productivity benefit. Great.
Yep.
Um, but tricky nevertheless. What's your last question? One piece of advice for contractor evaluating safety technology.
Ooh, it's a good one. So I do think you should skate where the puck is going, not where the puck is today. So I think if you're evaluating technology, think about where you want to be in 2 to 3 years and what is going to drive an outcome. A lot of times I'll see an RFP or I'll talk to a customer who's saying, well, I have this job coming up and I have to do X, Y, and Z things. So that's why I'm going to, you know, go with X or go with Y, or I just have to do this.
Mhm.
And I think
Mhm. Mhm.
my advice is safety is too important to look at it as just an RFP. You should ask the question of what role is safety going to play in my company, and what, like, look at it very holistically across all your SOPs and your training portfolios and how you approach safety. And if you do that and you think about what makes sense for you, you'll have a much better safety portfolio. I do think, and I see a lot of companies that just collect safety products. Like, oh, we had to do this for this job site, so we bought this one, and then we did that, and we bought that one, but they didn't like that one, so we bought another one, and then we bought, you know, and then no one's doing the same thing, and then before you know it, you're basically just managing like a portfolio of safety products instead of managing a safety program. And so
Yeah.
I think everyone, and this is just, I do this in my own house, right? Like, before I go buy something new, like, what am I trying to do? Where am I going? What do I want to be doing in a year from now? And I think if you can answer those questions well and, like, really focus your buying process around that, I think that
Mm.
you will get good technology, and you will also hopefully have less overhead of managing your technology, which I think is just as important as what you're buying. So,
That's a
yeah.
really unique insight. I don't think we had something similar like that on Bricks and Bytes. So cool.
Yeah, cool. Well,
Very good.
it was so nice
Okay,
to talk to
Julian.
you.